Hello everyone, this is OKUCR. I hope everyone's doing great and always OKUCR is working hard to provide the absolute best to our students. One of the most commonly asked questions constantly shown in our emails was about how one should study and prepare for general test. Now in this video, we believe there should be two different modes of studying. The first mode is just general education mode where we study for general classes to prepare for medical schools, which is also known as the prerequisites. And the second mode should be different than the first mode because it should be solely based on how to take tests well for big exams like MCAT, USMLE Step 1 to 3, ITE, and boards, and so much more. Now, but in this video, we are going to focus on general studying method, the first mode, so that you can use an undergraduate study for you to prepare general exams such as biology test and organic chemistry test. Remember, all these things are OKUCR's opinion, which means your studying method can be different. Hence, studying using whatever the method works for you. But please, we believe this is certainly the best method when it comes down to studying, and we're pretty proud of it. Now, we believe studying should be more about recalling than input. What I mean by recalling than an input means is that you should spend more time recalling the topics rather than just trying to memorize everything on paper. If you see something on a test and you're familiar with it, and then you're, feel like you know it, but if you cannot recall the specific information, you will probably be drawn out on tests because many people remember they have studied the concepts, but can't recall the specific information they have to write down and pick on the test. So in order for you to recall things, we believe making flashcards is the best way to go. I'm pretty sure everyone had a moment in their life when they're seeing the tests and the questions and remember that they have studied for this and even remember the pages in the environment they were studying for. Like, for example, you remember that this was from like topics 2.3 or something, but there's a time where you cannot specifically remember the specific one you have to remember for. That's the reason we want to prepare, prepare for recalling, because by recalling the specific information, you will be able to, study better and then also remember these things better on test. Now, making flashcards with hands is tedious, but that's the reason not a lot of, but almost all American medical students use Anki as their go-to studying method because they can practice recalling subject with less work while just typing it or even buying off the Anki decks from like companies from Emboss or Anki. Now, it will be good for you if you could buy the cards, but for your case, there isn't a company that makes the Anki cards for your own specific professors or class. So you need to make your own. So we're gonna teach you how to make your own cards with creative ways for you to use to make yourself, better and to make yourself to recall subject better and study better. Now, we're gonna go over some of the examples to make your questions for your flashcards. This isn't the only ways for it to make. You can do more and more, add on to your weights. It's just the guidance and what we think is the best. You can make your own, you can make the best out of it. Please just use this as grains of salt to make your questions better every day. Let's say you're preparing for a biology test, molecular biology midterm 1, and then let's say you are, general content lecture. We're gonna go over close tips and making the video tips and write down the thought process. Now, if you are making your cards, click add, and then you can, I already made questions in the text in case, but we want to show you how to make one. Let's begin. So we're gonna go over how to make the cards for these general contents. Let's say you wanna remember something like general content. Like two forms of isomers have the same chemical formula but have different molecular structures. For example, in glyceraldehyde, the H and the OH, hydrogen and alcohol group can take either two positions left or right the carbon chain. Let's say you want to remember this part. Maybe you have to remember what is isomers. The two forms have the same chemical formula, but have different molecular structure. Maybe you can make yourself, you can just, if you're, wanted to make your cars faster, you can just say the two forms of isomers have the same chemical formula, but have same. And then if you click your cars like this, and when you see it, you will we have to see your cars like this. Let's say, oh, what is the two forms of isomers have the blank chemical formula, but have blank molecular structures. You can say, oh, the two forms of isomers have the same chemical formula, but have two different molecular structures. Now, you can do that. I think that's fine to do, but what we think you can make it even better is, oh, by the way, the close tips is that if you want to remember multiple things, let's say remember this, that, when you click like close, you have number 2 and number 3. Now, what would happen is if you add your cards like this, then you would have a multiple cards that you will remember this first and then this for the next card. But if you want to remember multiple information in the one card, you can just erase the 2 and click 1. And then your preview will look like, you can remember this and this and this and that. Like this. So you can remember multiple information in one card, but we actually suggest our students to make their cards more specifically to remember only few parts in a one card, because if you make like one card with the 15 different information to remember, then it's hard for you to repeat the part that you don't know. Because if you miss like 2 of 15, then you have to repeat the card. And then what happens is you reinforce the part that you don't remember as less often than the parts that you know for sure. So make your cards, break down cards more specifically and make your cards smaller. The more specific your question, the more specific your cards are, and more specifically it goes down, the better it will be. And then let's say when you're making it, you want to see, yeah, I understand what the isomers is, but what does the isomer look like? Maybe you want to see what isomers look like, right? Then you can actually, go to the slides. And then maybe you can put slides like this. In order for you to do your cards and then see the pictures of it for better understanding. It's great. I think it's one of the amazing features you can do. Now, let's say, wait a minute. I want to go over some videos explaining this part because it's hard for me to get it. You can go to Google actually. Open a new window and let's say, oh, isomers video. Let's see with this part. Takes forever. Okay. You can go to YouTube here.
In this video,
And let's say you want to remember, like, you like the certain parts of video. I like Organic Chemistry Tutor, or you can do Khan Academy and so on. What you can do is you can actually, oh, where is it? You can actually like no, you can actually, where is it? Where is it? Oh, you can actually click here. And then no. Where is it? Where is it? Where is, oh, share, yes. Sorry, you can click embed. And then let's say you want to remember the part for 214. You can click there. And then you can click copy. And then what you can do is go back to the car. And then let's say, all right, I want to remember, I remember this part, but I want to make it even better. Now, this is a point. When you look at your keyboard, I cannot show you right now, but click Shift, Command, and X. Shift, Command, and X. And you will be able to see this big coding screen, whatever the things you see, you're scared of it. Don't be scared of it. Just paste the codes that you just copied from YouTube. And then click Shift, Command, X again. And voila, you just added the videos. Now let's see what it look like when you do your cards. Let's say I'm doing my cards. Oh, the two forms of isomers have the same chemical formula, but have different molecular structures. All right. When you click it, you can see the pictures of it at the same time. You can play the videos for you to go over.
Part 2, or
I think this is one of the best features of all time. I use it all the time because you don't have to go back and then search it for yourself or search it for your own ways to remember the certain parts that explain the videos. I think this is really good for you to prepare for test because for you, you can just add information that you want to be looking at it as someone going over it. And you can do that for cards. I think this is an amazing feature to have and to remember. Also, one of the best way for you to do your cards too is maybe write down your thought process. I mention this part often because a lot of times when you make your flashcards, you remember the informations, but you forget why you remember the information. For example, it's like, yeah, the two forms of isomers have same chemical formula, but have different molecular structure. But why? Why does isomers have same chemical formula, but have different molecular structures? Ask yourself why. Then you can say, oh, because even though they have same chemical formula, they look like they are mirrored from one and another. And since they have same chemical, this true, but they actually have that's right. I think that's a good thing to do. So it's good for you to just write down your thought process in a card so that when you do your cards, you remember this. Oh, same chemical formula, but have two different molecular structure. Wait, but why? Oh, because even though they have same chemical formula, they look like they are mirrored from one another. And since they have same chemical formula, it's easy to misunderstand. They have same molecular structure too, but they actually have different. Same as right and left hand example. Rather than write down your notes, I think this is best. Because let's be honest, do you remember everything you have write down in your notes? I don't think so. I personally don't. But in this way, you can recall the information, plus you can recall why you remember that part. So you can even recall your thought process and you're making the connections. So that's the best way to go. Now, the second part I want to go over is specific question about certain names. There's a time where you have to like remember the certain names for it. And there might be professors who play around with letters. Like for example, my biology professor was a great person, but he loved drawing people with the names. He loved it. Like for example, he would give a questions like, which RNA that stays inside of nucleus? Is it tRNA, rRNA, mRNA, and so on? He used to give questions like that. And that's when people are thrown away because people remember that it's RNA, but they don't remember it was a transfer or ribosome or messenger. I don't know if R stands for ribosome, but I don't know. But people really don't remember the specific names and the specific information critically to a point where they remember the RNA, but if they're given the specific names for it to pick, they might be thrown off, and we want to prepare that. You can do that by specifically recall it, like let's, for example, let's see you want to remember the functional groups. Now, just like I said, you want to remember this, and if you want to remember them all at once, if you see the other number, just erase and click to 1, erase and click to 1, erase and click to 1. And so on. And maybe you can even take a screenshot of where the lecture came from. I do that because it makes me remember that it was from the lecturer. And then sometimes if you want to add more information, you can just add the slides of your lecture so that you can read off the information, add it more, and become more creative every time you do it. Let's say you add it here, and then you preview. Oh, what is the function going to most frequently in biological reactions? You remember those names. Voila, great, really great. This is a really great way for you to remember the specific names because a lot of times people get the feelings of knowing it, but not knowing it. You need to specifically able to recall it in 3 seconds. The reason is I'm pretty sure your test, each question gives you less than a minute. You have to recall it straight away. So that way you can prepare for yourself a test. Now, that's the specific question you can do for yourself. And then if you have a sample midterms or sample tests, and then when you look through it and have a similar questions, add it to your cards and make it similar so that you can be able to prepare for the test that you're going to get. Third part is it true or false? True or false is very important. I think it's one of the best ways to prepare because you can trick yourself. I love this. There is this method, not the method, but there's this quote called play like you never have won, practice like you have never won, and then you play like you have never have lost. I think that's a really good approach to remember who we are because you need to practice your tests, you need to study it like you never have gotten A or something. Like, I'm not saying that, but you need to study to a point where you cannot fail. Like you need to study to a point where you can absolutely win. And on a test day, you can just take your test like a practice. So if you practice and if you study like you're taking a test and perform well, on a test day, you just do a practice. It's just whatever test days, whatever practice. So let's say you want to trick yourself. Where is it? Oh, let's say you want to remember this part. You can ask yourself, true or false? purposely make yourself a question that is false. Because I truly think that you have to trick yourself so that when you make a lot of cards like 500,000s, you don't remember making that card, but when you go back, you trick yourself to a point you have to critically remember. Oh, more complex. Hydrocarbons. Oh, 7 to 8 plus. And please make your false card in first sentence soundable. Like, don't give yourself a chance to remember that this is false by making some weird sentences. Making your sentences as pretty similar to answer is the key, because you want to trick yourself. You want to be more critical. 7 to 8 both. You can say false or compound. You move around. True or false. Okay. This is actually wrong. Because more, let's say more common wrong. Maximum 1. Because you know, 8 to 7 is actually more than 2, so that is true. So let's say more complex hydrocarbons and around maximum 1 carbon atoms. False. Should involve then you can write your thought process. Guys. So what? You can add it like that and then, you know, play around it. And then say, oh no, that's false. The point of this is that you make your questions tricky as possible so that you will think that this is right, but it's not. We want to prepare for you to not to be fall into temptations of choosing a similar source. Because on a test, when you're taking questions, you will probably be like, sounds great. No, you don't pick something that sounds right. You need to pick the right answer, not the sounds like right answer. And you want yourself to prepare for that. You need to prepare yourself for taking the test. You need to make a question similar to a test that you're going to get. Now, the fourth part is the picture occlusion. It's absolutely amazing. I love it. I love it to a point where I cry. Let's say you want to remember certain things from the pictures. Just take a screenshot of it. You can actually just remember that part. Let's say, oh, I want to remember this part. Then you add also here. You can either choose hide all or guess one. I like to do hide one, guess one, so that I remember I see the other parts of the cards to remember it better for the next time. But you can choose your own. Let's say preview. And then what is glucose? Oh, it looks like this. What does fructose look like? Oh, it looks like this. You can remember it, and then you can try yourself to imagine it to prepare for it. This is the picture occlusion you can use for every other things you can do. I think is amazing. I think is simply the best. One of the best. Like, you know, you can remember this part, like for example. If you need to remember the dehydration process, I think the key is you need to remember that water H2O is removed. So maybe you can ask yourself, like, you know, if it's a dehydration synthesis reactions, you can, you know, cover this part. remember the water. You need to remember the water is removed. And you can say like hide all guess one. So you can do like, oh, which part is being removed? Like, oh, the hydrogen and the alcohol comes together and leaves an oxygen, and then leave out the water. You can remember like this, which is absolutely great. I think that's the best way to go. Now, that's only the information we're going to go over, but there should be much more. There is one part I want to mention is there are a lot of times people go to SI session and they'll have to TA sessions and they usually make these questions, or maybe your professor gives you practice questions like this. If your professor gives you questions like this, what you should do is just copy and paste in your Anki. Absolutely beautiful. Too beautiful. And it reads this part. And then you put ionic water polar in. Maybe you can do a red bold to tell people that this is the right answer. And you can write your thought process. You don't even have to remember. I mean, you can remember the answer in the question, but more importantly, you need to remember why this was the answer. So maybe even if they give you questions in the answer, you can memorize or recall the thought process. What type of bond is between the sodium and the chloride, and the table so why does it dissolve in water? Ionic, water enters a polar and C and other. And then maybe you can do thought process like, oh, H2O. I'll be honest, I haven't taken molecular biology for like 3 to 2 years. So I don't specifically remember why water interacts with the polar. I'm pretty sure it was like the water hydrogen bonding or something, but maybe you can write their thought process. And then the reason behind. Why? Maybe you can, add here. I actually do this so that I remember that this was the right answer. Because sometimes when I'm making the cards in a very fast actions and fast manner, I make a mistake where I pick the wrong answers or something. Then I can just add the pictures of it. So every time when I make a false information or when I make a wrong grammars or something, I go back and check the actual slide or actual questions and answer and fix it for myself. So you can do like, what is the answer? This, and then you can put your thought process and you can see which was actually from. I think this is really great because this is literally your own versions of taking the test, but even better because now you recall the thought process. By recalling the thought process, you can take your test faster than ever, and you can prepare yourself better than anyone. I personally excelled in biology, specifically for every bio class I took. I'm not flexing on anyone, but I remember taking the test and finishing it within the 10 minutes. Like I purposely had to set down for the other 20 minutes because I was scared that I might look like I'm cheating because I finished it too fast and I still got A+. If you practice yourself like this and make your question similar to the test that he's gonna give it to you, you're gonna excel in the class. And the one good part about using Anki is when you're taking your final, and when let's say you made a midterm CARS index for like this for 2 and 3, you don't have to prepare your final. Just go over the question you went over again, and then you can make yourself better. And then just add more information and add more practice question you get later on. More you make your question similar to the test you're going to get, the better the result will be. That's the part that I want to mention. If you have any more questions, if you have any more ideas you want to ask, you can comment, you can send us email at okucr@gmail.com and many more. And thank you so much for having here, and I hope you guys are doing great. Bye.